For decades, Ontario was considered the heart of Canada. It was the country's wealthiest province, the top destination for immigrants, and the place where millions of people believed they could build a better life. But something changed. Today, entire families are leaving Ontario behind to start over in other provinces. The dream of home ownership is fading away. Hospitals are struggling with severe staff shortages. The number of people living in tents continues to grow every year, and car theft has turned into a multi-million-dollar industry linked to international organized crime. Meanwhile, another province saw an opportunity and launched a campaign encouraging Ontario residents to move away. So what happened to the province that, for decades, was seen as the greatest symbol of prosperity in Canada? In this video, you'll discover why more and more Canadians are packing up and leaving Ontario behind, and how this shift could be reshaping the future of the entire country. For decades, there was an almost unquestioned belief in Canada. If you worked hard, saved your money, and built your career in Ontario, sooner or later, you would be able to buy a home. That was the famous Canadian dream of home ownership, a goal that seemed well within reach for the middle class and helped make Ontario the most desirable province in the country. Millions of people built their lives around that promise. But today, that reality seems to be slipping away before the eyes of an entire generation. What was once considered a natural milestone of adulthood has become an almost impossible challenge for many Canadians. Buying a home is no longer simply a matter of saving money. Across many parts of Ontario, especially in the most populated regions, home prices have risen far faster than wages. In practical terms, that means even people with good jobs, university degrees, and above-average incomes are finding it extremely difficult to enter the housing market. The impact of this shift goes far beyond finances. It has completely changed the way thousands of young people view their future. Many no longer even plan to buy a home because they simply don't believe it will ever be possible. Instead of saving for a down payment, a growing number of people are focusing all their efforts on being able to afford rent, which has also skyrocketed in recent years. This has created a remarkable trend. For the first time in decades, many Canadians have started looking to other provinces as a chance to reclaim a dream they thought had been lost. Instead of staying in Ontario and facing ever-rising housing costs, entire families have chosen to start over in places where buying a home is still possible without sacrificing nearly all of their income. Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and even some of the Atlantic provinces have begun attracting people who, just a few years ago, would have never imagined leaving Ontario. And this decision isn't driven solely by housing prices. For many, it's about reclaiming a quality of life that seemed to be slipping away. After all, when a family can trade a small rented apartment for a house with a backyard while spending less money, the move becomes about much more than finances. It means more space, less financial pressure, and the feeling that all of their hard work is finally paying off again. If there's one province that has benefited the most from people leaving Ontario, it's Alberta. In recent years, cities like Calgary and Edmonton have welcomed thousands of Canadians who decided to start over somewhere new. And the most interesting part is that many of them weren't looking for a better job, they were looking for a better life. To understand this trend, all you have to do is compare the reality of the two provinces. While home prices and rent remain among the highest in the country across much of Ontario, Alberta still offers much larger homes for significantly lower prices. For many families, that means leaving behind a small apartment and finally being able to own a house with a backyard, a garage, and much more space while paying less than they were before. But housing isn't the only advantage. Alberta also offers competitive wages across a wide range of industries. Professionals working in construction, healthcare, technology, engineering, and transportation often discover they can earn almost the same salary they made in Ontario while facing much lower day-to-day expenses. At the end of the month, they have more money left over, a greater ability to save, and regain something many felt they had lost: the feeling that their hard work is finally paying off. Another major advantage is quality of life. While millions of people in the Greater Toronto Area spend hours every day stuck in traffic, cities like Calgary and Edmonton generally offer shorter commutes and a less stressful daily routine. It may sound like a small difference, but getting back 2 or 3 hours every day can mean more time with family, less stress, and a far better quality of life. There's another factor that often goes unnoticed by people watching this migration from the outside: taxes. When someone decides to leave Ontario, the first thing that usually comes to mind is the cost of housing or rent. But for many families, the move also makes a difference in how much money they actually have left at the end of each month. In Canada, in addition to federal income tax, every province has its own provincial tax system. That means two people earning similar salaries can end up taking home different amounts of money simply because they live in different provinces. And that's exactly where Alberta stands out to many Canadians. Although the difference depends on each person's income and tax situation, Alberta's tax structure often results in lower provincial income taxes than Ontario's. On its own, those savings might not seem life-changing, but when combined with more affordable housing, a lower cost of living, and reduced commuting expenses, the impact on a family's finances can be substantial. That's why many people say the move isn't necessarily about earning a higher salary, it's about making the most of the salary they already have. After all, there's little benefit in earning a few thousand more dollars a year if much of that money is eaten up by higher taxes and a much higher cost of living. What truly matters for most families is how much money is left after all the bills have been paid. Another sign that Ontario is undergoing a profound transformation can be seen on its streets. For many years, large homeless encampments were mostly associated with cities like Vancouver, largely because of the opioid crisis that hit Canada's west coast. Today, however, that reality is no longer confined to one part of the country. Across many Ontario cities, tents in public parks, informal encampments, and people living in trailers, vans, and even cars have become an increasingly common sight. What's even more striking is that this is no longer limited to major metropolitan areas. It has also spread to mid-sized communities, where scenes like these were far less common just a few years ago. Public parks, riverbanks, vacant lots, and even downtown areas have seen the rise of makeshift camps, reflecting a crisis that goes far beyond the lack of affordable housing. For many residents, the change happened so quickly that it completely transformed the way they see their own communities. But why is this happening? The answer lies in a combination of factors: soaring rents, a shortage of affordable housing, the rising cost of living, mental health challenges, substance addiction, and financial hardship have created a situation in which a growing number of people simply have nowhere to live. In some cases, losing a job or facing an unexpected financial emergency is enough to push an entire family into an extremely vulnerable situation. There's another aspect that surprises many people. Not everyone living in tents or vehicles is unemployed. In some cities, outreach organizations report that part of this population has jobs or works temporary positions, but still cannot afford the rent available on the market. It shows how the housing crisis has expanded beyond traditionally vulnerable groups and is now affecting a much broader segment of the population. There's another problem in Ontario that, until just a few years ago, seemed like something straight out of a crime movie. Today, however, it has become so common that it has changed the daily lives of thousands of residents and placed Canada at the center of one of the largest international vehicle theft networks in the world. We're talking about the surge in car thefts, particularly SUVs and pickup trucks, which has made Ontario one of the biggest targets for this type of crime in North America. What makes it even more alarming is that these thefts are rarely random. In most cases, they are carried out by highly organized criminal networks. Instead of stealing just any vehicle, these groups target specific models that are in high demand on the international market. Brands such as Toyota, Lexus, Honda, Ford, and Chevrolet frequently appear on the list of the most sought-after vehicles. The methods used are just as remarkable. In many cases, it takes only a few minutes for a vehicle to disappear from a home's driveway. Criminals use electronic devices capable of copying or amplifying the signal from key fobs, allowing them to unlock and start vehicles without breaking windows or forcing entry. In other cases, they exploit electronic vulnerabilities in the vehicle's systems. By the time the owner realizes what has happened, the vehicle is already miles away. But what happens after the theft is even more surprising. Many of these vehicles never remain in Canada. Investigations have shown that a significant number are transported to logistics hubs before being shipped through the Port of Montreal. From there, they are loaded into shipping containers and sent overseas, primarily to countries in Africa and the Middle East, where they are resold for high prices. In some cases, the vehicles arrive almost untouched, with only altered documents or new identification numbers. This international operation has made fighting vehicle theft far more complicated. It's no longer enough to arrest the people stealing the cars. Authorities must dismantle criminal networks operating at every stage of the process, from the theft itself to transportation, document forgery, export, and overseas distribution. It is a sophisticated operation worth millions of dollars, involving specialists in logistics, technology, and smuggling. The consequences extend far beyond the loss of a vehicle. Many residents have completely changed their daily routines out of fear of becoming the next victim. Some have installed electronic immobilizers, GPS trackers, steering wheel locks, and security cameras around their homes. Others avoid parking certain models on the street overnight, or make sure to keep them inside a garage whenever possible. What if I told you that this migration stopped happening only naturally and began to be encouraged by the government itself? It may sound unusual, but that is exactly what happened. While Ontario struggled to deal with rising living costs and the increasing number of residents leaving the province, Alberta decided to turn this movement into an opportunity. In recent years, the provincial government launched a campaign called Alberta is Calling, specifically designed to attract workers from other parts of Canada, especially from Ontario and British Columbia. The strategy gained attention because instead of promoting landscapes or tourist attractions, the campaign focused directly on what concerned millions of Canadians the most: money, quality of life, and future opportunity. The message was extremely clear. Alberta wanted to convince people that they could build a better life without leaving Canada. Instead of dealing with increasingly expensive home prices, spending hours stuck in traffic, and facing a high cost of living, the idea was to start over in a province where household income could go much further. More affordable homes, competitive provincial taxes, attractive salaries, and a strong job market became the main arguments. The most interesting part is that this campaign was not aimed at an international audience. It targeted people who were already living in Canada and who often already had jobs, professional experience, and financial stability. Alberta realized there was a growing number of workers dissatisfied with life in Ontario and decided to compete for this population in the same way companies compete for customers. The strategy also took advantage of a very specific moment in the Canadian economy. After the pandemic, remote work became more common across many industries, allowing professionals to choose where they lived without giving up their careers. For these people, moving to another province no longer meant starting completely over. In many cases, all they had to do was pack their belongings and continue working for the same company while living in a much more affordable city. In addition, Alberta experienced strong demand for workers in industries such as energy, construction, healthcare, technology, and transportation. The campaign aimed to show that the province offered not only cheaper housing, but also real opportunities for people who wanted to grow professionally. It was a way of presenting the move as an investment in the future, rather than simply an attempt to reduce expenses. But the reason some Canadians are leaving Ontario goes far beyond money. For many families, the concern has become something much more important: healthcare. After all, what is the point of living in one of the country's wealthiest provinces if, when you need medical attention the most, you find a healthcare system that is increasingly overwhelmed? In recent years, several regions of Ontario have faced an unprecedented healthcare crisis. Hospitals have been operating beyond capacity, while shortages of doctors, nurses, and other healthcare professionals have become one of the province's biggest challenges. In some smaller communities, the situation became so severe that emergency departments had to temporarily close during nights or entire weekends simply because there were not enough medical professionals available to keep services running. This type of news, which once seemed like an exception, began happening more frequently. For people living in these communities, it means facing the uncertainty of not knowing whether the nearest hospital will be open during an emergency. In some cases, patients have had to travel dozens or even hundreds of kilometers to find another facility capable of providing care. But the problem does not end with emergency room. One of the biggest challenges faced by Ontario residents is finding a family doctor. In Canada's healthcare system, this professional is responsible for tracking a patient's medical history, requesting tests, providing initial diagnoses, and referring patients to specialists when necessary. However, finding a doctor who is accepting new patients has become extremely difficult in many parts of the province. For some families, the wait can last months, and in certain cases, even years. Meanwhile, medical issues that could have been resolved quickly are often delayed or redirected to urgent care clinics and emergency department, putting even more pressure on a system that is already operating at its limit. It is important to point out that this crisis does not mean healthcare professionals are simply leaving their jobs. On the contrary, doctors and nurses frequently report exhausting workloads, too many patients, and difficulties keeping up with the growing demand. An aging population, rapid population growth, and challenges in hiring new professionals have created a combination of pressures affecting almost every part of Ontario's healthcare system.